can take that design and say, okay, I want that on my arm or my leg or wherever you want it. You can look at a friend's tattoo and say, hey, that's a good idea. I think I'll get that too. Right? It's sort of, there's some freedom to pick and choose. These guides can vary in various levels of meanings. But for the most part, not much permission allowed. Okay, everybody can sort of do what they want. Well, when you're talking about Polynesian societies, specific societies, especially in Polynesia, when you're talking about tatau, when you're talking about getting a tattoo, it's very, very, very strict business, because you have to think about what's appropriate to get and what's not appropriate to get. Tattoos in Polynesia are related to your family, related to your genealogy, your mo'okuauhau, where you're from, what part of the islands you're from, representing that. And most times, a lot of places, you can't just take something. It has to be given to you, or you need to ask permission, or it's a signification of rank. Okay, so and tatau also has religious connotations. It has cultural and societal influences upon them. Okay, so designs are very, very specific. Okay, so there's a difference between English tattoo, which is sort of body ornamentation, and tatau, which is more ceremonial, and it's closed. Okay, so on and so forth. You get the idea. Also, the word aloha. Okay, this word in English has been taken from Hawaiian and to varying degrees used by the tourist industry basically as a commodification of Hawaii. Okay, it's been used to sell and promote people coming to Hawaii. It's been used by the tourist industry, sort of a romantic idea of Hawaii. Okay, what doesn't really mean the same thing as it does in a Hawaiian context. Okay, people don't use the word aloha in and amongst Hawaiians as you would see it on a postcard, perhaps. Okay, so the word has changed, obviously, and this whole area of word meaning is called semantics in linguistics, and it's called semantic drift. Okay, so the words' meanings have changed. Okay, on to number 3. Socially constrained. Okay, languages are socially constrained, and by that, all it really means is that languages and cultures are tied together. Okay, this is a very, very, very crucial point. Okay, that you cannot disconnect the idea of languages and cultures. Okay, the article I put up called "Languages and Cultures" gives you a good idea as to how they're tied together. Okay, you can't separate them apart. In fact, they're very, very much interwoven and interlocked. Okay, so for example, you cannot have a culture that exists in silence. Okay, even deaf culture has language. Okay, and we're not just talking about audible language. Okay, we're talking about communication, which in general is so much more than words coming out of your mouth. Right? It's getting across ideas. So you can't have a culture that exists in silence, and neither, on the other hand, can you have a language that exists without things to talk about. Okay, i.e., cultures. So very, very basic idea. And we see this in languages, in Hawaiian, as core vocabulary. Okay, words describing things. Okay, and different languages will have different amounts of words depending on things that are the most valuable to that culture. Very famous example are Eskimo languages, which have a high amount of vocabulary for snow. Okay, without getting into the obvious reasons of why. Right, we can contrast that with Hawaiian, okay, which has many, many hundreds of terms describing the ocean and the sky, the colors, their depths, their activity, the proximity to shore, all those types of things. Hawaiian has over 300 varieties of kalo, and many terms that are surrounding the kalo. So it has all of these terms and words that are devoted to things that are very, very important to that culture. Okay, so language and culture, again, are very, very close. The main idea is a term that I need to introduce because it's going to affect the rest of the course. So sort of perk up your ears, get out your pen and paper, whatever you're doing, and write this down because this is very, very important. And I will post up some lecture notes, I hope, to follow up with this so you can like read along or something. But it's a Hawaiian idea called kauna. Okay, this is very, very important, and you'll need this through the rest of the course. Okay, now kauna talks about layered meaning. Okay, layered meaning. So where you have one word, it often has many, many different meanings beneath that. Okay, and this is most easily seen in Hawaiian composition, mele, in oli, chanting. Okay, how words and phrases pauku are put together, and the sort of intent or the art of Hawaiian composition is really to sort of pack in meaning. Okay, not just make it obvious. So when you read it, it's just okay. This, and that's very obvious. But you pack in meaning, and every word can carry a different connotation to it. So you can read one sentence many different ways, right? And how does that connect to the sentence below it, and the stanza or the pauku as a whole? How does that connect? Okay, so it's tricky business actually. Okay, but kauna is that describes that idea of layered meaning. Okay, and even in deciphering a very, very famous phrase, "Ika olelo no keola, ika olelo no kamake," okay, which is actually talked about in that article by Paul Nahoa-Lucas on the Hawaiian language policy in the courts. You can read that in there. Okay. All right. Move on to the last one, which is historically related. Okay. Last feature, number 4 of basic features, the language. Languages are historically related. Okay. So like just as we can lump people together, classify people into aggregates of relationships, right, and have family trees, we can do the same with languages. Okay. We can see that this person was descended from that person, from this place, so on and so forth. We can do the exact same thing with languages. Okay, we can say that Hawaiian, because it's spoken in Polynesia, is related to Marquesan to a higher degree, and to Tahitian to a higher degree, so on and so forth. And we can put all the Polynesian languages. We have 20 Polynesian languages spoken in Polynesia, and we can lump them together and create a language tree out of them. Okay, and you can actually see these language trees in the article A History of the Austronesian Languages, or Languages of the Pacific. You can look at those 2 articles that we assign, and you can actually see those language trees, and they're quite interesting actually. So what you're gonna need is it's called a language tree model. Okay, now obviously I can't draw it for you on a blackboard right now, but it will be in the accompanying lecture notes for this audio series. Okay, and it just says basically when you look at that language tree model, okay, is that there's going to be an X and then another row A, B, C, D, E, and then another row with A, B, C, D, E, dialects and languages. And it basically says, the model tells us that where you start with one language, okay, as time goes by, right, because basic feature number 1 says languages are always changing, always evolving, right? So as time goes by, okay, language will start to diversify. Okay, differences will start to creep in between speakers, and that'll lead to diversification. And as enough time goes by, those differences will be more and more pronounced, that you'll have different dialects. Okay, now as much more time goes by, those differences in dialects will produce different languages. Okay, all of the 20 Polynesian languages started off as one single language. Okay, and as that language got transported different places, time went by, those differences signified themselves into all of the languages that we have today. Okay, so it's in a language tree model. Okay, and the technique of historical linguistics is what works backwards to explain where languages came from. Okay, so that's part of this idea of languages being historically related. Okay, and okay, the next lecture, audio lecture I'm going to give you guys will be on Hawaiian language. Okay, I'm going to give you an introduction to Hawaiian language, how it's pronounced, what are some of the things that make it work. So this concludes this section on languages and linguistics. Mahalo and ahuiho. I'll see you guys again in a short bit. Aloha.